This is a short bite episode of Homeschool Together. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together Short Bite Edition. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about a little homemade unit study, nature study, getting out into the world. We've kind of had that kind of as a theme. We've talked a lot about things to do for the summer, and tis the season in the Northern Hemisphere that plants are growing, berries are coming, and food is being produced, and it's a wonderful time to get outside. We had a podcast a couple weeks ago about getting out with all trails and kind of seeing the world and whatnot. And today we were talking a little bit about something I've been doing with the girls. Where this may be the second week it started. By the time I think this podcast releases, we'll probably be 2 or 3 weeks into it. But it's definitely something I'm trying to do, is to get the kids out into nature. That's always been kind of a push for us, and we kind of always there's that meme where the guy's riding the bicycle and he sticks the stick into the front wheel and the bike falls over. Every time I feel like we say, oh, let's get outside and go do some fun things, and we always fail. So I'm still trying to do some more outdoorsy things. And so this summer, I thought maybe the best thing to do was kind of focus on things that are in our area. So specifically the trees and the plants, local edibles, kind of the planes, trains, and automobiles of the local nature, and also focus on kind of local farms. And so I've gone and done some research and found some farms in the area. You pick farms. We have a lot of berry production here in the Pacific Northwest: strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, and all those tasty summer treats. And so I found a bunch of farms, and I found a bunch of places I could go and take the girls. So I'm actually really, really excited about that. And that's kind of what, the gist of what I've been focusing on.
Right.
And so we began basically by doing, we're going to start with trees. I think that's been the easiest thing. Strawberries are about a couple weeks out from the U-pick. So I'm going to backfill with a few trees before we get some tasty treats. But basically the thing is that I'm trying to pair my hiking and the hikes and the trips around the area with identifying local wildlife.
Right.
Not only just the trees and the bushes that are in the area, but also trying to find birds and try to find animals, even if it's just, the traditional massive Pacific Northwest, corn-fed gray squirrel. It's good enough for us for the most part. So basically I'm pairing the hikes with kind of like a scavenger hunt for, local wildlife, but also with a focus for a tree. So like, for example, our first week was the Western red cedar, which is a very classic tree that's found here in the Pacific Northwest. Really beautiful tree. We have 3 of them in our backyard, so we didn't have to go far to find them. But on our first hike, the thing that we did, we were looking for them. I had printouts, so I'm actually going online, finding printouts of kind of criteria to look for the tree. I put them into a binder, and I bring like little plastic baggie to collect the seeds or the cones, whatever that might be. And then also the leaves of the tree and a little bit of the bark, because those are typically the things that identify a tree. The main things that you would use to identify what is that tree. And then I'm having the girls go and find those things. So first of all, we're looking for it. And, I do a lot of prompting because I see the tree. And I go, hey guys, do you kind of see a tall tree that looks sort of like these criteria? And they start looking around and scanning, and all of a sudden, the 6-year-old goes, hey dad, I think it's that tree. I'm like, wow, you're really good. And so we start collecting leaves and everything. So I've found that to be very, very fun. And then as we continue down our hike, I then prompt them periodically as I see one of the trees, or if I see a bush or an animal, I prompt them to, hey, do you guys see any more Western red cedars? And so immediately they stop and they start scanning around and looking for them. And it's been really cool to engage them while they're doing the hiking, while they're outside, and while they're kind of a captured, focused, group of people that are, looking for something, and they're out in the wild. And it's been a good experience. I've actually had a good time. I've actually had a really good time.
So you've put together this cool notebook, and
Yes.
You've got a reference book here. So kind of walk us through the cool notebook. I want to put a picture of this on the Facebook group because it's super cute.
So I went to Canva, my favorite online designing tool. So if you have not used Canva in your homeschooling, we should do a whole podcast just on
We
Canva.
probably could.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as part of the technology. I love Canva. We actually
it's free, so
it's free, but we actually pay for Canva.
because that's how good it is.
That's how good it is. The so basically, I just created like a just simple 1/2-inch binder, and I created some nice clip art of kind of I don't know manga looking characters.
Well, it's
Of
like it looks like a
and
dad and two girls.
Yeah, and then I had like a Pacific Northwest photo on the back. Ariel swooned when I made it.
It was super cute.
It was. It took me about 5.5 seconds to make, but.
Right. And so in that, so walk them through kind of what you put in that binder for your Western red cedar as an example.
Yeah. So basically I went out and I spent about 3 minutes on Google Images. So that's the thing I always like to do is like go right to Google Images, because if you're looking for something that's kind of printable, whether it's, I found like a slide of a presentation or an image of a tree, or, maybe some criteria or an infographic. Great place to go is not just the web search, but actually go right to, if you're on Google and you select images and then do your search there, you'll find a lot of great things. And if you click on one of the things that are sort of what you're looking for, like I was looking for kind of an infographic, very often what they'll do is if you're on a browser, they'll show you that image and then they'll show you related things below that. And then very often I find what I need, with it not from that first click, but also, probably from that second or third click down below. And so I find a little bit of information on that tree. I find another print off, maybe something a little bit nicer picture of like the leaves, if it's something specific. Like the Western red cedar has kind of a scaly leaves that are long, and they're not your typical pine needles that we all expect for a conifer. It's got this kind of scaly appearance on the leaves, so it's really, really unique. And I thought it would be a really good one to start with. Also, pictures of like the bark, like we're going to do the Doug fir probably next week. That has a very distinct bark. That really tells what it is. And then a very distinct pine cone that it drops with kind of like this mouse's body kind of hiding in the pine cone all around it. So it has like this tail and these two little legs coming out in the pine cone. And it's a very distinct design. So I'll have them look for that, and we'll maybe do a little story about that, or maybe have a print off. I had a couple print offs for them to do kind of coloring pages of the tree so they can color them as well. And then I have just like, basically I said earlier, a baggie that, I can collect things and whatnot. And so
are you using the coloring pages before you go out so that they kind of know what you're looking for, or how are you?
I'm doing it sort of a wrap up when we get home from the hike.
Okay.
So they can sit down and we can just color it. And again, it's just like that, that kind of that looping idea where we're kind of coming back and touching on the same thing. So then we did a follow-up hike this week. We did a second one. And in this one, I did kind of a quick print off on like, Microsoft Word, where I said, okay, I want to find a squirrel. We were going on a hike near a river. So there's a stream and a river. So I had them kind of like a check mark box for them. So as they were walking through, they could check off. It was more for my 6-year-old, and we were going with another stay-at-home dad, another unicorn, who has a daughter who's 5, and I made one for her as well, so they could have a pencil and like kind of check those things off. And on there, I wanted them to find a couple of Western red cedars. So, it was a little bit more tough because they wanted to play a little bit more. So the scavenger hunt thing didn't go as well as I had thought, but they did find a couple things, and they checked them
had
off.
they not have been with a friend, I think that would have worked a little bit better.
It might have.
So you print off an infographic with information about it so that you can have that ready when you're out in the field, and you can say, okay, this is what we're looking for, and this is what it looks like, and this is the basic facts about it. You send them out there to find the pieces that you collect so that you guys can look at them later, and then when they come home, they're doing the coloring pages so that you can kind of reinforce that. And as you go on further hikes or further even down that hike, you're trying to reinforce this idea of, hey, do you see any of these, so that they can keep thinking. I know that on some of our walks in the evenings, you've been asking them, oh, do you guys see any Western red cedars?
Yeah, right.
And the kids are kind of on the lookout for it. So those are the ways that you're reinforcing it.
Yeah. And it's funny because even now the 3-year-old is like being able to, she was like walking around Western red cedar, it's very funny. But even unprompted, my 6.5-year-old, she was able to point out a few red cedars this week. So it was really cool how like she's remembering it, and having that kind of looping aspect, I think was really helpful. And I'm trying to do about 2 to 3 hikes a week now with them, about an hour and a half. It's not really that long, maybe a mile and a half hike. And it's really cool to see them kind of seeing that. I know this whole week it's been beautiful here, and we've been going on walks every single night. And so I know my oldest, we were playing catch while you guys were playing at the playground or something, and she pointed out one of the red cedars that was kind of they used it as kind of like a hedge style tree planting at the park, and so she pointed to it. She goes, "Oh, Daddy, I think that's a red cedar." So it was cool. It was cool to actually see it happening and reinforcing, the idea of, here's some local trees that you're starting to identify and everything.
Right.
So that was really, really cool.
So in order to choose the subjects, you've got a reference book.
Yeah. And so we wanted to kind of pair this podcast with not only just the idea of, it doesn't even have to be trees or anything. We're not saying you have to go out and do this, but just, putting it into practice and kind of like, figuring out what's good for your local area. Like if, for example, maybe you're in Minnesota, do you want to go to all the lakes in your local community, right? Or whatever that might be. Or maybe you have, some other type of, maybe you're in the New England area and you have a lot of like historical battlegrounds that you want to go to, right? And you want to do kind of a unit study around that. And maybe you're in the Maryland area and you're going to just go all these Civil War battlefields, right? And you can have a whole unit study just built around that, right? Just kind of that idea of putting something together that's very simple, very straightforward, very small. Do the activity, go there, and then reinforce that thing, whatever it might be. So I'm doing trees, but somebody could do almost anything at this, in this respect.
I think it works really nicely though for nature-related items that they can go. Something like going to Civil War battlefield. There's so much more study behind something like that. Whereas this is,
but even if you're going
to
even if you're going to put the names into the mind, right? Like, okay, this is the Shenandoah Valley or whatever it might be, whatever the battlefield.
Thing you're trying to get them to remember and have some familiarity with. Yeah.
So, but we're pairing this, what we're doing. And, if you choose something else to do, it's really good to go find a book that fits you. For us, we found the DK Smithsonian book. They have this whole series of like kind of Smithsonian focused.
They're fantastic.
DK, we're big fans of them. We've talked about the eyewitness books, but this is another DK book. This is Our World in Pictures. This is the Trees, Leaves, Flowers, and Seeds book. And we'll put a link down below if you want to check it out as well.
Yeah, this is a wonderful book. We own it. We're so happy that we do.
Yeah, and I'm kind of treating it like a spine in some respects.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So basically, the thing that I had bookmarked that I didn't get to today, but I was going to get to later, and I'll show it to Ariel, like they have a whole section here on ferns.
What is a fern?
Yeah,
right?
and so now we have
so many ferns.
We have so many ferns in our area, and what I was going to do is come home today and have them pick some ferns. And you saw I had the ferns, they had picked the ferns. And so we were going to then read the section of, it's like 2 pages.
Right.
And read the section and talk about ferns and how they kind of grow as an do
some fern rubbings after that too. Those are always fun.
Yeah. And so there's just like a lot of cool activities and just talk about, undergrowth versus, trees and the upper canopy. And this would be kind of an undergrowth, ground floor type of plant and that doesn't need as much light. And we'll talk a little bit about, the needs of the plants and things of that nature. And there's a lot of great information. So as we're going to go through this summer, I'm going to be pulling in this book as kind of like my spine. And you don't have to choose a lot of books. I don't have to choose like 5 or 6. I just got the one. And the one is really good enough for me to, leverage as something, we can reinforcing the learning that we're doing. So the Trees, Leaves, Flowers, and Seeds by the DK Smithsonian, and then kind of pairing that or taking a spine book and pairing that with like kind of a homemade eclectic, unit study that fits whatever you're interested in.
Right. Well, and I think it's interesting too that you're kind of making this study as you go along, which is an interesting concept. A lot of times I think of something as like, I take it on myself that, I've got to set up the entire thing before we start. And for you, you're saying, hey, you know what, this week, this is what the weather's like. This is what we're going to do. This is the plant or tree or whatever we're going to focus on. And one day it could be a bird or it could be anything.
And I want to pull in some animals along the way too. Then specifically, as I said earlier, kind of the farming thing. So we're going to go to a U-Pick strawberry farm. Later in the season, we'll do the blueberries and raspberries.
And this book even has those in it because...
Has them in it as well.
They are seeds.
Seeds. And well, just in general...
The fruits and the seeds.
Yeah, just in general plants and whatnot. So it was just... This pairs well with what I'm doing. Again... Everything can be, it's one book and my binder. I toss it in the bag. I throw some drinks and a couple snacks and we head out. And it's super easy. It's ready to go. It's the same bag I use to take to the gym. All I do is swap out some of my gym stuff, put in the unit study stuff, and we're out. And it's pretty quick. And doesn't take much time. And the amount of work that I put into it to prepare for these things is super easy, right? And even if you don't know the top trees in your area, that's just, again, that's a little Google search away. from saying, okay, what are the top 5 trees in the, the state of Michigan, right? And then you find those 5 trees and you go out and try to find them, right? And most likely they're at your parks, that type of thing. So anyway, that's just kind of how I've taken kind of an interest of mine. It's something that I want the girls to know a little bit more about, and then kind of get them connected to a little bit of the food element. Maybe we'll do a little bit more of that next year, and then try to tie that into some learning, especially through the summer, to keep them engaged, and then pairing that with nice outdoor activities, physical activity, being healthy, getting some fresh air, seeing the world, getting some vitamin D that we so desperately need here in the Pacific Northwest. And then, just kind of putting it all together as a whole cohesive thing. And it doesn't really take that much time. So,
yep, they've been having a great time with it. So we wanted to share with you all.
And Ariel will post my super cute picture.
It's very cute.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
happy homeschooling!